everyone, Lauren Culp here, publisher and CEO at CUInsight.com, and I am bringing you a 3 questions video interview today with a special guest. We're really excited to have this conversation. Joining me is Jenna Meyer, the Director of Client Success at Shield Compliance. So excited to have Jenna here. We're going to be talking about cannabis banking, so it's a really interesting topic. Jenna, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Lauren. I appreciate it.
We do too. Well, the first question I have for you, in this kind of current rising rate environment that we found ourselves in, a lot of economic uncertainty, how can cannabis banking help credit unions manage their balance sheet and maybe find some new growth too?
It's a great question. So, cannabis banking is a great way to provide a financial institution with low cost deposits, potentially some lending options. I know that can seem scary to a lot of financial institutions, but there's a lot of opportunity there. It's a great source of non interest income as well. But there are a lot of cannabis entities that are out there that need a financial institution to do their banking with, that they have a secure and compliant solution for. So the opportunities are endless. So it's just taking this leap into this different portfolio that a lot of credit unions still have not ventured into yet.
Absolutely. Well, and I know for some credit unions, they've kind of dove in head first. For others, they're maybe a little bit more hesitant. So when it comes to lending, what are some of those challenges that credit unions should be aware of, and how can those be addressed specifically with the lending piece?
That's a great question. So, cannabis lending in general, obviously, is very similar to your standard commercial lending. But you can have a lot of challenges if you're not doing that upfront due diligence. You may not have the same collateral that you would on a standard commercial lending opportunity. So, making sure that you do that due diligence upfront, that you understand the business, that you are doing that ongoing compliance that's required of this industry really can avoid a lot of those challenges. So you know what you're getting into before you do that. There are some additional compliance requirements associated with the cannabis portfolio for both deposit accounts and lending. So, unlike other commercial lending opportunities, you do have to continually file SARs. Every 90 days worth of activity has to be filed on a continuing SAR. You may have board of directors that are not completely comfortable with cannabis lending. So having those conversations up front, making sure that your board is on board with cannabis lending is really key. And then also making sure that you have the staff in-house that understands not just commercial lending, but also the cannabis perspective of that. So the different challenges that these companies do face, and then what you need to be monitoring for them on an ongoing basis, having an understanding of where their sales are coming from, how they're paying back that loan, just in all the details along with that. We're often called on to assist clients with coming up with their programs. We have great resources that we can refer you to, that we oftentimes partner with that. We can also help out with the outsourced staffing solutions too. So it's important to know that there's different options out there. You don't have to have all that expertise in-house right off the bat.
That is so much good information, I think, for a lot of credit unions who maybe are a little bit more hesitant to know that they would have a partner like Shield Compliance who could really offer some of those solutions and support for them. What are some of those other misconceptions that credit unions might have about cannabis banking?
Some of the common misperceptions or misconceptions that people have about cannabis banking include that there's a stigma with cannabis banking. It comes from anything of, well, if word gets out that we are working with cannabis companies, some of our regular members may not want to do business with us anymore, or there are going to be deposits coming into branches that smell like cannabis. We don't want that in our branches. There's definitely ways around this, whether you bring in a cash courier or some credit unions choose not to advertise that they're doing cannabis banking, but they're still getting the benefits of that. There's a very strong word of mouth community within the cannabis entities. So there are ways to overcome those. One of the other common things that we hear about is, well, there's not a lot of licensees or a lot of cannabis entities that are not banked in our area. Well, there may or may not be, but you also have to think about that beyond just the companies, you have all of their employees that are also looking for a credit union that they can partner with. So a lot of our cannabis entities really appreciate when the credit unions will say, hey, if you have employees, let's bring in those accounts. Let's bring in those consumer options for mortgages or just general checking and savings accounts that you may not have normally. A lot of the Larger non-cannabis friendly entities may frown upon having members that their only source of income is working for a cannabis company. So you have a lot more options that you can bring them in, or you can bring in more accounts than what you may have. I think also people are concerned about the amount of due diligence that you need to do with these cannabis entities. There is a lot of documentation out there and a lot of companies that are willing to partner with you. We have a cannabis banking playbook that helps you walk through the entire endeavor of banking cannabis. What should you be looking for? What's concerning? What do you need to make sure that you have in your policy and procedures? There's also a lot of outside resources that we can utilize or partner with for you as well. But it's also going to give you all this extra due diligence. While it may be time consuming or seem daunting in the beginning, it's something that you can make into a really streamlined process. And it gives you a much better amount of insight into your members and what you have from a standard checking or savings account. So you can very easily expand those relationships, again, not just with the consumers associated with it, but also the businesses. So there's a lot of opportunities. It's not always negatively looked upon by the common people. It's looking as a, hey, we care about our community. We want to bring additional services to our community, to our members. So it's normally a very good thing. Just make sure that you do your due diligence up front. You have the internal conversations that you need to with your executive team, with your board, and then go out with a good purpose and good intent. Research what you need to do, partner with a good organization, make sure that you go in with it eyes wide open, and it can really reap a ton of benefits for you and for your credit union.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like there's so many resources that Shield has to offer. We're going to link to that cannabis banking playbook that you mentioned. And as we wrap up, any final thoughts for our audience or final asks of our listeners today?
Just ask questions. No matter what you're trying to do or what you're curious about cannabis banking, there are a ton of resources out there, and it's a very helpful community. People do want to assist. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out for anything that you may be curious on. I promise it's not as scary as it may sound.
Wonderful. Well, Jenna, thank you so much for sharing all of these insights with us today. For all of those who are watching, we're going to link to Jenna's contact information and that contact information for Shield compliance as well, so that anybody who wants to get in touch with their team can do that. Jenna, I hope you stay well and have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Lauren.